Ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to be speaking to you today at this Geneva summit. My name is Polina Nemirovskaia. I'm 20 years old and I'm a human rights activist with an Open Russia movement founded by Mikhail Khodorkovsky. Ever since I was a child, I've always been interested in politics. My family would tell me that it's not the best thing to be fond of in Russia, and if you're an opposition member, you will eventually end up in jail. So while all the other kids thought they'll grow up to be astronauts or ballerinas, I was preparing myself to prison. As you can see standing here, I'm still not there, but many of my friends are not that lucky. When I was 17, I actually did as my family wanted me to. They wanted me to become a corporate lawyer and earn a lot of money. So I went to law school and then I took an internship at some Gazprom subsidiary company. The office was nice and the bosses were lovely and I had a Mercedes-Benz to drive me on business trips, but 2 months later I took a train to Yaroslavl to join Boris Nemtsov's electional campaign there, because I've realized that what's going on with my country is not how I want to see it, and I wanted to make some change. To be honest, until I met Boris Nemtsov, I never liked him. For me, he was just an ordinary figure from the 90s, and I was tired of seeing faces in politics that were there even before I was born. But that summer changed everything for me. Boris Nemtsov turned out to be very bright and very alive, and what's more important, he was sincere. He wanted the same for the country as I did, and he didn't seem to be making any profit from being an opposition leader. He just did what he thought was right, the same way as I did. Against all the odds, he won that campaign. And after that summer, I ended up with something more, with hope. It was very important to me to know that there are good and honest people between the leaders of protest in Russia. And even though I still didn't trust any other politicians, I had one to believe in. My resume after that wasn't anything but corporate. I came back to St. Petersburg while Boris was shuttling between Moscow and Yaroslavl. I've joined his political party, left his political party, traveled a lot, helped my political refugee friends abroad, moved to Moscow, moved back to St. Petersburg, and even worked in a district court for several months to find out how things are from the inside. I'd see Boris at protest, would say hi, make some jokes, and go our separate ways, but I always knew that in case of any trouble, I can call him and he will help. I can't do this anymore. A year ago, he was murdered. Some said that we woke up in a different country. We didn't. The country was the same, and everything was the same. It was the same Russia on that Friday as it was on Thursday and Wednesday and the Tuesday before. Even the murder wasn't new. Opposition members have been killed before. It wasn't new, yet it was. Only because it was so open and so brazen. Kremlin walls and Chechen killers directly connected to governor of Chechnya, Ramzan Kadyrov. Insiders would tell you that Putin himself was shocked after that. He took a pause to think of what he shall do next. That would have been the perfect time for Kremlin to realize what they're doing to our country. That would have been the perfect moment for them to stop. But now, a year later, we can see what decision has been made then. It's not only about Kadyrov, though he seems to be a perfect symbol of time with his Instagram where he publishes death threats to members of the opposition, and with his henchmen throwing cake to face of ex-Prime Minister Mikhail Kasyanov in Moscow, in the center of Moscow, in a restaurant a year after his partner was killed, considering that funny. Now it's about what Kremlin itself does. You see, they've decided not to hide anymore, not to hide just how much they hate everything independent, whether it's political or not. Now Kremlin even has to fight its own people, long-distance truckers, borrowers at mercy of banks and collectors, small businesses, and so on. And still they come up with new, even more severe laws, and still they put innocent people to prison. Thinking of Ildar Dadin, a victim of new law that prosecutes people for protesting in the streets. Think of it, in Russia, if you go out on the street, even to picket, not to cause a riot or anything, you are fined by the police. And if the police finds you 2 or more times in 6 months period, you go to jail, like Ildar Dadin did. He got 3 years for solitary pickets. And I've received a letter from him recently, and he says that he will spend whatever time is necessary in prison in order to stop this law. And now our lawyers at Open Russia takes his case to Constitutional Court to stop this law while we still have chance. And I personally think that we do have chance. Since Kremlin started targeting not only us, the opposition, but also ordinary people, people not involved in politics, more and more of them realize that there must be an alternative. More and more people are not just ready, but desperate for change. And change is coming soon. What I hope for, what Open Russia is doing, is that we will be able to show people how to escape the crisis and how to unite ourselves in our country. We are working on many fronts now. It's education, election, media, monitoring, and human rights is what I and Maria Baronova, my colleague here, is what we do. We want people to know that when they are put in prison on trumped-up charges, they are not alone. We provide financial support for families of political prisoners. We organize public campaigns in their defense, and we provide them lawyers in some cases. Last year, for example, there was celebrated Tangeyzer case, the opera banned in Novosibirsk for insulting the feelings of members of the Orthodox Church. The local government tried to pin charges on the director, but he was acquitted. Then there was a case of Svetlana Davidova, a mother of 7, who was accused of treason for speaking up about Ukraine. She was put to FSB jail, but with our lawyers, after 2 weeks, she was released and her case closed. Then there was my friend, Andrei Pivovarov, who was heading an electional campaign in Kostroma, a regional city in Russia. He also was put to prison, and he spent 3 months there before we bailed him out, and his case is not closed yet. And this year, one of the people imprisoned for taking part in Bolotnaya Square protests was released on parole with help of our lawyers. These victories are the reason why I'm optimistic about the future. Yes, of course, Kremlin will stop at nothing to stop us, but since they're now fighting everyone, they don't have so much time to spend on us alone. They're fighting a losing battle, and they know it. You see, it's possible to stand up against the system in Russia. Not always, no, but enough to give all of us, an increasing number of us, and opposition Russians and ordinary Russians, a hope, reason to hope, and reason to keep fighting. So, fighting for alternative vision of Russia, better for Russians and better for the world. We see it in our hearts and minds, and we hope that you will see it with us. Thank you.